saying, like, if you would like to introduce yourself, I'll wait for Damola to solve his issues.
Oh yeah, totally. I can do that. Well, first of all, hello everyone. Thanks for allowing me to be here. My name is Chimdi. I currently reside in British Columbia, Canada. I am a Tableau visionary and ambassador. I'm a database developer and designer. And I guess I'm kind of involved in the community in different ways. I co-host Makeover Monday, Analytics TUG. I love to viz essentially. And so anything to do with Tableau design, I love that. And I guess outside of, the whole work thing, I enjoy music, making music, or at least trying to. I like watching documentaries, and I like fitness related stuff. So, that's just the basic stuff. If you want to know something specific, you could just ask me.
All right, cool. Thank you. Damola, are you good? I don't need to see the questions. Yeah, I'm asking you to unmute now. Did you see it? Okay, I'm gonna try again. Okay, yeah. Cool, yeah. Nice.
Sorry about that.
Nice, good. Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah, hi. Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing introductions, right?
Yes, okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I was just saying, I think I should be your viewer, right?
I didn't hear that. What'd you say?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just saying if you'd like to introduce yourself, like something fun about you, like let's get to know you.
Yeah, sure. So hello everyone. My name is Damola Ladipo. I live in Maryland in the United States. I'm really glad and honored to be here. I'm a data visualization specialist for DevTech Systems for the United States Agency for International Development. Been working there for quite a few years now, going on 4 years. I do Tableau Public for fun, to develop skills. I'll talk definitely more about that. I love doing data vises. I do a lot of business dashboards for work, but for my Tableau Public profile, you don't really see any business dashboards. It's more standalone data visualizations. And for fun, I love sports. I love soccer or football. Favorite team is West Ham United. Love playing it, love watching it. And I'm big into baking, so I like baking bread. So yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Freaking bread. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So nice. For those unfamiliar, so we have like general questions, and then just gonna ask. Let me hear me, and then we'll walk through the questions. So the general questions are going to be answered by both of you, and then I have like a little bit more specific questions for you guys. Sounds good. Okay, let's go. So first, so those unfamiliar, I mean, I'm not sure we have many of those presents. Can you tell us about your journey up to this point, right? So what would you say are the milestones or important spaces your journey in the data space to this point? Yeah, Chimdi Nwosu next.
Okay, so if I'm hearing correctly, basically you want us to talk a little bit about our journey so far with Tableau?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Sure, absolutely. So, great question. I guess first off, we're in 2024. My Tableau journey officially started 4 years ago, 2020. I feel like a lot of people got into it around that time during COVID. So what was that?
Yeah, sorry, please go on. Sorry.
Okay, no worries, my bad. So yeah, I started in 2020, and during COVID, I just kind of got caught inside and I started creating things. I first of all took like a few courses on the Tableau e-learning site, and that really got me, curious about what more can I do. And so after the course, I started making stuff on the side, showing it to my friends. of course, because they're my friends, like, looks good, looks good. But, you know, that wasn't really the kind of feedback that I was looking for. And so somewhere along the line, I found the Data Fam through Makeover Monday. And I began to participate in Makeover Monday basically every week. And so from there, you know, started to get some feedback from Eva and Andy, the originators of the whole thing. And then, you know, became, I think, a featured author, and then an ambassador, and then a visionary. And I think just over time, you know, I got a lot of great feedback in the community, and that just really kept me sort of going with it. And then I think finally, at the time when I started, I was actually doing stuff that was not directly related to visualization. But over time, I came to realize like I definitely want to do visualization, specifically with Tableau if possible. And so I started looking around for things. And, you know, just because I was posting consistently, people would reach out to me and would have conversations. And eventually I landed a role in the industry. And then fast forward a few years, I kind of started a side business on the side, dealing with clients. And today I'm basically here as a visionary ambassador. And I'm really grateful because, like, you know, I've kind of received a lot of gifts in the community. Like, you know, I think I have like 14 visitor days, like 6 vizies. You can kind of see some of them back there. So that kind of inspiration for me has just kind of kept me consistently going. I think I have like over 100 visits on my profile. I'm definitely not bored. I definitely want to keep doing more. And I love kind of just having people, you know, ask the questions and also just let me know that what I'm doing inspires them. So for me, as long as I can, you know, click on the computer, log on, and like think of stuff, I think I'm gonna do Tableau. I have a friend who teases me. He's like, "You're never gonna retire," and I'm like, "That's absolutely correct. I'm just gonna keep going until I can go." So that's it with me in Tableau. Like it's just something that's allows me to express myself creatively while also providing value for businesses and people and inspiring and being part of the community. So it's, you know, it sounds cliche and a little bit corny when we hear people say it, but Tableau changed my life. And so I'm always going to be happy to talk about it and get other people to sort of give it a chance to see what it can do for you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's I'd say what I had to say.
Yeah, that's a lot to that's me. So yeah, Damola, you want to go next?
Yeah, I definitely want to echo some of the things Chimdi said because it definitely changed my life too. Um, I'll go further back before I even started with Tableau. So I started my career as a research analyst doing more qualitative data analysis and data collection with really minimal data visualization. If it ever was, it was just like in Excel at the most and seldom really done. And then after that, I pursued a degree in international development and humanitarian assistance with a focus on monitoring and evaluation, which does have elements of data visualization, but it's a lot of reporting and data collection and analysis. And from there, I worked overseas, worked as an assessment officer, doing data analysis, and then a monitoring evaluation specialist. And as I was doing the work, I realized the one aspect of the job I liked the most was the visualization part. I mean, I don't dislike writing. I don't dislike writing reports and doing data collection, but the thing I had passion with and I was really excited about was reporting. And I remember there were 2 occasions where we had to do a report. One was on various locations of water points, and another was a report on shelter and non-food items. And I thought, and myself and a colleague of mine realized there was a much better way to display this information rather than doing a report that usually people don't read. Doing some form of interactive visualization of dashboards. So for one of them, we created an interactive map. We actually use Power BI. I think we can mention Power BI here. And the other was in Tableau. We did this really interesting interactive visualization for the client, and they were really happy about it. And from there, I got really excited about data visualization. Funny enough, I actually went to R to visualize first to do some personal projects. And it wasn't until I created my Twitter account and I came across the DataFam hashtag and then Makeover Monday. And I was so, the world of the Tableau public community was really opened up. And I dove right in. Around the same time Chimney mentioned, I think early 2021 for me, I created my first Tableau public viz. And I think it was for Makeover Monday. Actually, yeah, it was. And then from there, I just had a passion to maybe not every week, but as much as I could, creating data visualizations from there. And since then, I think a year later, I became I was recognized as one of the Tableau Next. I became a featured author. I think a year after that, I became a Tableau ambassador. I've been a Tableau ambassador ever since. And from then on, I've just continued to use Tableau Public to develop my skills outside of the workplace and really try to get as involved with the Tableau Public community as possible.
Amazing. Thank you. You guys can hear me, right? Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? Chimdi and Damola.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think that was very, very explanatory and helpful. So just moving on to the next question. Over time, individuals tend to find their theme within the visualization space. How do you discover what you would say you are good at or what your brand is? Right? Maybe I should close up. It's like over time, individuals tend to find their theme within the data visualization space. How do you discover what you would say you are good at or what your brand is? How was your journey towards the self-discovery? Right? And then I think it's a lot of questions, but the last one, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? Did you get that? Should I start again? Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna ask it again, okay? Okay. So over time, right, individuals tend to find their theme within the space, within the visualization space, okay? How did you discover what you would say you are good at within the space and what your brand is, okay? And how was your journey towards the self-discovery? Let's take those two first. Damola, you can go first, yeah.
Sure. Okay, so I think there's a few things to answer here. As I mentioned, I use Makeover Monday to really develop my skills. So I think I mentioned when I provided my introduction that for work, I do a lot of business dashboards, and for Tableau Public, I really don't do any. Mostly because of time, but also because I think it's a great platform for me to develop specific skills on a specific visualization type and to be sometimes more creative on ideas that I have. And as far as my specific brand and developing that, I think my brand would be focusing on the audience and how to communicate that with them, and the specific design choices I make. I think some of the key things that I try to have as elements in all of my visualizations is my choice of font, which is pretty consistent. I use Futura a lot, as well as Arial and Tableau. Using similar color palettes. And the layout formats of my dashboards are pretty similar, oftentimes with the Z format, and using as much data ink as possible to tell the story. So I try to use my titles to explain part of what I'm showing. I try to use the bodies of text and highlighting key things, highlighting aspects of a specific visualization. I use a lot of annotations when it makes sense. So using those things to tell as much of the data story, not just the actual visualization, but other elements to really guide the user and explain what the visualization is as clearly as possible is important. And if I could do it all over again, I think there are a few things that I would change. One is that I would sketch more. I think when I first started, I would always jump straight into a visualization, right into Tableau, and not really planning out what the idea was. Doing a lot more of identifying what if this visualization on paper makes sense, and also beyond sketching, even creating mock-ups using tools like Figma. I use that a lot now, but I did not use it a lot in the beginning. And really just planning out and structuring how I'm developing a dashboard. I think when I first started, there wasn't a ton of structure in whether it was a business dashboard or just a standalone data visualization. As I said, jumping straight in was fun at the time, but not a good use of my time. And now having more structure in how I'm creating data visualizations has really enhanced my skills and abilities. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, you did. Cool. Chip, did you want to go next? So just so you guys know, the link to the questions is in the chat. So you can like read it in case you're not getting me like quickly, right? And then you can follow along. Right. So yeah, Chimdi.
Awesome. Yeah, great question. I'd say on my side, when I started to get, I guess this would answer the question of how I discovered my strength or brand. So right around the time when I started to use Tableau, I also discovered, Illustrator. And so how that happened was I took a course by Frederica Fragapane, I guess that's how you say it. And she took us through a process of creating a specific, visual in the tool, right? It's basically, do what you want to do and then post it for feedback. And so I did something, she gave me feedback. It was fantastic. And the first thing I thought about was, is this something that can be done in Tableau, right? And the visualization is basically, I think, incarceration in America is very artistic based. And, I drew it from scratch in Illustrator. And so I made a second version in Tableau and they were almost identical. And I think that for me was the aha moment because I tend to gravitate more towards, infographic visualization based things. And Tableau is known as an analytical tool. So I think realizing that we can actually design things in Tableau and make them look like extremely aesthetic, for me, that's something that really, resonated with me. And so over time, I've just kind of spent, time experimenting with different design styles and different things. But one thing you'll tend to notice now about my work is, I try to focus on aesthetics while making it very functional. So, for example, I give you the insights, I'll make it look beautiful and it looks like an infographic, but I'll also add in a bit of exploratory capabilities so you can still explore and find your own story and create your own understanding. So it's a bit of a combination there where it's not just a static viz now, it's like, nice and aesthetic looking, but also you can explore and it's an actual data tool. So for me, that's works really well, both on Tableau Public and both with serving clients. And so, just the short answer is design, functional aesthetics, and just also allowing people to develop their own insights and find stories within the stuff that I produce. So that's what did it for me. And I think, so far, unless something changes in the space, I'm going to continue to do that because it's worked really well.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. That was very good. I think there was a top part of the questions. So it's about if you had the chance to do it all again, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? So I'd say, honestly, so far, so good. I think the only thing that I would change is maybe I might try to create a system for stuff because a lot of what I do, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit, but I barely plan stuff. Like I barely sketch anything. I get the data, I explore the data, and I just viz. And then I just go with how things feel. I go with how things look. And because of how consistent I've been over the years, I find that I just execute in a similar fashion. But if a person comes and asks me sometimes, how do you do these things? I tend to struggle a bit because I never actually created a system. Now I'm trying to do so, but I think that's something that I would change is I would try to systemize things early. That way I can have a more refined process as opposed to just jumping in and being a little bit random with the creations. Does that help you understand that?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, that's what I did different.
Okay, next question. Yeah, so next question is personally, right? I usually believe that being naturally good at things would be helpful, right? Like being naturally good at calculations, for example, or having a creative talent in design, that like colors and like creating stuff and all of that. But not everyone is equally talented, definitely. So what do you think one can do as a beginner or someone at the intermediate or advanced level to bridge the gap between themselves, like if you're not naturally as good as others in calculations or in, design. So how do you bridge the gap? And then how do you then get better technically, or you get better in your design? If that makes sense. Do you get the question? Yeah, okay. Chimdi, you can go first, and then Damola.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's a good question because obviously, we all want to get better and kind of keep improving. And I think I've seen this work for me and a lot of people. And what I say is, as difficult as it is sometimes, it's very helpful to try to just keep doing and doing and testing and doing and doing and doing. Because, one thing I've observed is you'll see someone come into this space, right? And, they'll produce something and it's like, thumbs up, fantastic. But it's not like crazy. And they'll produce something else and they'll produce something else. And then all of a sudden, the quality of their work, it just changes. It's almost like night and day. And you're wondering what happened. But then you go to their profile and you're like, oh, this person has like 60, 70 visits. Obviously, they're going to get better. And the same thing happened for me too with Makeover Monday. Participating as frequently as I could on a weekly basis, it meant that you can jump in, you can get feedback on what's happening, and then you have something to try for your next viz. And you do the process again and again and again. And those little increments that are happening over time, they add up in a short time to now become this massive jump that you've made in your skill set. And now you're now going from a beginner to intermediate to like almost advanced very quickly. So, how to think about it is if you do something today, right? Okay, let's use the gym, for example, right? If you work out a muscle part this week and then you wait for 3 weeks before you get back into it, your body has already forgotten what you did before. Today, you go 2 days from now, and you go 2 days from now, your body's going to get stronger more quickly because you're adding more weight, you're giving it more food, and there's more frequency there. So in the same way, I liken that to visualization and data. You're doing more frequently, and so those little jumps initially, they just eventually add up to a massive gain in your skill set. So that's what I'd say works really well. Obviously, there are different things you can do, like studying and taking courses, but in this kind of thing, it's a hands-on based field. So doing more is just going to help you get better faster. That's what I think.
Thank you. Damola, yeah?
Yeah, same for me. I mean, I got to echo that. Like practice is really key. It's how I grew my skills really rapidly. I mean, when I look back at my first visualizations versus now, it's humbling to see how quick my skills improved. And similar thing, again, echoing, like participating in community projects is massive. The one I did the most was Makeover Monday. I do a fair amount of Sports Viz Sunday too. So participating in those as frequently as possible. For feedback for sure, but also because I get a lot of inspiration from that. I mean, I see other people's vises on the same data set and seeing how they did it and think, oh, I could have visualized that differently, or I could have adapted those elements into that viz, and maybe it's something you could apply into a future visualization you will work on. And lastly, like seeking creative ideas and inspiration outside of just the Tableau community is important too. It doesn't have to just be BI. There are other things you can find inspiration from. Maybe it's the way a website designed how to present some information or laid something out. Maybe it's a standalone visualization. Maybe it's a news article or something completely different. Maybe it was just like a graphic designer's visualization. There are other ways to incorporate ideas to present information to people beyond just BI, which is important to try and add to your catalog or portfolio of skills to improve your skills in Tableau.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Next question. Okay. Yeah, in the end, a very important part of the process is to become employable and make a living off doing what you love best. What do you think is the best pathway from having visualizations on your portfolio to applying for visualization opportunities and exposing yourself to jobs? So from starting the Makeover Monday project and being a part of the community project, to using those things that you have to apply for jobs and then getting opportunities and exposing yourself to those stuff. Yeah. Damola, I can go first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my experience is trying to expose or share your work, your portfolio. So it's not only just creating your visualizations on Tableau Public, but also in some way, whether it's on other social media sites, it could be LinkedIn, it could be X or Twitter, Instagram, or maybe you have your own website. Showing those is also important because it garners interest and attracts people to your actual profile. But I think it's really important. I mean, I'll say that my current job I got because I was recruited, because people had seen some of the visualization work I had done. I know other people, that's the similar way they've gotten their data visualization jobs. So not just having a profile, but trying to expose that to a wider audience is really important. Once again, participating in community projects is really key. And also identifying which hashtags make the most sense for specific visualizations you're sharing. So whether it's a community project hashtag or it's a relevant hashtag for a current event, it's really important too. So using those and leveraging that to try and get more exposure for the work you're doing is really key for getting your work out there, but also getting recruiters and people interested in your work to identify you as a strong candidate for a position.
Yeah, Chimdi.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer from Damola, and I think I'm gonna, second some of that stuff. I believe that you have to do it in public, whatever you do. Like you can be the greatest, at anything, but if no one knows about it, then unfortunately, it's like you don't exist. And so in addition to that, something else you can do is actually like share, maybe blog about it, talk about it, right? So says, share your thoughts. What experience did you have creating things? Because now that shows you as someone who can actually do something and also analyze and communicate about that thing. So now, people can see those other skills that are involved, like communication, and things that are going to be beneficial in the workplace. So I think those are the two things. Like Damola said, you definitely want to put your stuff out there for the world to see. I literally had a buddy of mine who he was a bit concerned about like sharing his stuff online. He was doing a lot of Power BI stuff and whatnot. He made one viz on Tableau Public. He posted it, and he literally got an interview and a job just off of that one visualization, right? And so that's what I think it is. Put your work out there, and in addition to doing that, start to have conversations in public. Like if you want to do a website where it's like, you're sharing your thought processes of your work, do that because you're exercising your writing skills, your communication skills. If you want to do, talks and speakers, then, you can volunteer to speak at Tableau TUGs and things like that. But the whole point is visibility, visibility, visibility. The more visibility you have, the more people are going to know what you are. They're going to know what your brand is. And the people who need what you have, they're going to come to you. And trust me, when you put in a job application, you're usually going to hear, here's how much we're going to pay you. But when people come to find you, they're going to ask you, how much do you want to do this thing that we're asking you to do? So automatically you're coming in with more leverage. You're coming in with more capacity, and you're easily going to transition smoothly as opposed to, asking, you're being offered. So that's one thing to keep in mind too, and why it's helpful to just put it out there. No matter how shy or concerned you are, because we are human beings, right? And it's not easy to put ourselves out there like that. But no matter what level you are, the point is just keep doing it, keep being passionate about it, because the market is competitive. And so every role that's out there, there's going to be a ton of applicants, right? People are just going to say, I can do this thing. Look at my resume. But if you can say, I can do this thing, look at me already doing it, then guess what? You already stand out. So do it, put it out there, and your opportunity will find you.
Great, thank you. Really, really great insights. So one more question from the general questions, and then I would just say if you're in the chat and you have questions, just pop them in the chat, and Victor will let me know, and then I will ask them. And also would give some opportunities for those that are here in person to ask some of the questions. So yeah, finally, for the general questions, before I go to questions that are for you guys individually. So yeah, being a Nigerian, even though in diaspora, and also being involved in some community building, given as you are both Tableau public ambassadors and like visionary, you are still somewhat connected to the Nigerian data farm community, and definitely that's why you're part of us here today. So what do you think, in your opinion, will be the next steps or the right steps for the Nigerian community to grow? How do we go from where we are to the next level with the community in mind? So like taking everyone along, how do we grow from where we are in the Nigerian space or Nigerian community in regards to Tableau and visualization as a whole to the next step or level? Yeah. So anyone can go first. Okay,
Yes.
make it easy.
Go first. Huh?
You
Oh,
nominated me.
okay, about Damola, but
Damola, go first then.
Can I go? Or you want to go?
Yeah, yeah,
you
go,
can go
go,
ahead.
go
You can go
first.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say that this Lagos user group is doing a great job, and I think you hosting this hybrid TUG is a great example of how to grow the community. So I think you're doing the work already, to be honest. But aside from that, sharing lessons learned or identifying lessons learned from other TUGs, because TUGs that have been around longer, I think is a great opportunity for you to learn and them to learn from you, because maybe you're doing things in new ways or better ways that they can learn from you too. Surveying the existing people who have been attending, so surveying the people who have attended today, surveying the speakers is also important, and also people who will be potentially interested in going to future TUGs will be good to get ideas from, and then also just surveying to get ideas for brainstorming to attract new members would be really key too. So I think you're doing great work, but getting feedback from the community, both potential community members and also existing, would be really important to grow the community too. Over to you.
Thank you.
So I think that was a good answer for sure. In terms of growing to the next level, keeping the community in mind, I think that just being able to have this, with the support of Tableau is fantastic. Perhaps, let me see. I mean, I think Damola definitely covered a lot of good points there, but I think maybe, one thing I do see is some collaborations, right, that happen. So for example, with the analytics TUG, right, and Tableau public TUG, the Black and Data TUG and Tableau public TUG. So that might be something that, widens your audience, right? So this is a Lagos talk, and generally, obviously there's mixed people, but a lot of it is focused on the Nigerian Lagos, right? But getting to collaborate with other TUGs just gives you more visibility into like some sort of what Damola said, kind of how they do things, kind of what their process looks like. So you can share ideas and learn from that, but then also you can share audiences and get eyes on yourself, because the more eyes you have, the more recognition you get in the community, and that's always going to be better in terms of growing and moving to that next level.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was really helpful. We'll definitely be taking lessons from that. So we have two questions from people here, and then one or two questions also from people virtually. So we just give the audience to them. So yeah, go first. The guy in first cap. Yeah, first. You come. You would have to come here so that people can hear you. Yeah, sorry. Just let yourself, tell us your name and hi.
Right. Thank you for having me. My name is Adedamola. So my question is, I saw Damola's post or in the recent post of something about from an inspiration from Chimdi's the UEFA Champions League visualization. And my question is, I tried doing the same thing. I went to look at the site where you got the data from, and it shook me because I was like, looking, this is a project I work with. And what hit me was that I had to scrape basically the data sets from both data. If I needed just matches like the data. And that hit me, and I was like, okay, this is a question I want to ask. How often does this occur? Like doing a lot of web scraping behind the scenes, because it's not just Tableau at the end of the day. But in the Excel, you need to do a bit of Python, a bit of SQL, database management systems into play. So how often does this occur? Sometimes did you have to learn it on the go, or is it the skill you have from very instant? So yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And thanks for checking out my vids too. Yeah, I do web scraping a lot for my personal projects. I don't do it much. We have other people who are way more skilled in Python or at my job, but I do have some pretty basic web scraping skills in R and Python. So yeah, I did actually have to scrape FBref. There are ways to connect to APIs and so on. I just decided to scrape it just out of time. And I would say for my personal Tableau public visits, maybe 10 to 20% of the time, I'm actually scraping the data because I'm oftentimes looking for data that is not in a data set. So it does require me to do my own digging to identify and a lot of cleaning. I use various tools. I've used R to clean. If it's simple, I use Google Sheets. But I've also used Tableau Prep a lot recently. Very easy to use. You don't need any coding skills. So for those of you who don't necessarily have the coding background to clean in other software, Tableau Prep, if you don't use it, is great. Just a lot of point and click to clean. Very easy to jump into. So yeah, I would say a fair amount of my personal visits, like 20%, 10 to 20% is actually scraping data to identify it.
Question. Yeah.
Okay, you answered the question. Chim, did you have anything else to add?
I see, I guess, what Damola has covered, I think that covers those questions. I see some in the chat about what is Makeover Monday and how can I be a part of it. And so I was really excited to see that because I'm one of the co-hosts of Makeover Monday now. So it's basically a project that posts a data set every week with an article. And the whole idea is you read the article, you look at the original visualization, and then you come up with your own visualization that's based around the same theme. All the data sets are hosted on makeovermonday.co.uk. And I'm going to paste that in the chat. So that's basically, a site where we're currently in 2024, but we have data going all the way back, I believe it's to 2016, if I'm not mistaken. So that's like 8 years worth of data that you can dig in, free data sets. And so, you got the data there, you got the articles there. And if you want to see inspiration, you can just go on Tableau Public, type in hashtag Makeover Monday, and you're going to see like all the submissions of everyone who has done that project. So you have everything you need in terms of getting your inspiration, getting your data, and having some context via the articles there. So that's something I really recommend in terms of getting your hands dirty, because you don't have to spend time searching for the resources yourself. They're just there for you. You just have to pick it, open up Tableau, and start visiting. And there's another one. How can I get nominated for VOTD? Honestly, that's really sporadic. I tell people don't try to get nominated. Follow your passion and you will get nominated. However, Tableau does have a blog. They speak about what you can do. And so I just posted that in the chat so you can read that article. Sorry?
Okay, the back. You guys are back? All right, okay. Sorry.
Can you hear us, Chimdi?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, yes. Please, you can go ahead.
No, I just posted the link from Tableau on how to get VOTD. And so that's definitely something to read upon, and it will give you an idea of what they look for. But I believe what I said still stands. You can talk to Damola and other people who have gotten multiple visitor days. Viz what you love, and more than likely that's going to increase your chances. But trying to target it, like, I want this, that is going to leave you feeling disappointed if you don't get it. So don't expect it. But of course, be grateful if you do have it, is what I'd say as far as VOTD goes. How can I get more inspiration from visits for amazing visits? Do I need to stick to my niche, or is it fine to develop across industries? Definitely do develop across industries. Inspiration-wise, you can look at Tableau Public. I use Pinterest a lot. I use Behance a lot. Just how people scroll Instagram is honestly how I scroll Pinterest on my phone. And so over time, you get to kind of see things. You can pin them. I have like hundreds of pins. And when you have an idea for a topic, you can go back to the pin and allow that to inspire you to create something amazing.
Thank you. We have one more question in person. Yeah. Hi. Okay.
Hi, Chimdi and Damola. I think my question is for Damola. For work, mentioned that you do a lot of report writing and your previous work, sorry. You used to do a lot of report writing and not a lot of data visualization. And I think I'm sort of like in that space too. I do a lot of data collection, analysis, but not a lot of visualization. And instead, how we communicate insights is like doing report writing. And I wanted to ask, like, how do you sort of like, I don't know, like convince execs that we could sort of, or pitch it to say, oh, can we incorporate like business into this? Because I think the reason why we sort of like use report writing is because of our partners and how they prefer information or how they prefer to receive information. So how would you recommend
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've had various levels of success with this. But for me, I think one of the key things is providing the option to whether it's a colleague or a client or users or readers. So basically, if there's a report to write, right? And the report there, it's not expected to have visualizations, but it could. So present that report, but also present a version of the report that includes visualizations, or present a version of that report that also incorporates a link to an interactive dashboard to say, okay, here is what it could be. But I've also added these elements too. When I've done that at times, a fair amount of time, I've had a lot of success. There was a time where we were collecting data on the progress towards achieving some goals. And it was just going to be a bunch of tables and various just written reports. But I actually created a dashboard that showed the actual percentage, like proportional progress on each target we were trying to meet. And then people realized during the presentation, oh, this is a great way to actually see what we're doing. I mean, the report was still helpful, and we still need to report to those that were the donors for the organization I was working for. But at the same time, presenting this information, which was easy to grasp, quick to understand, and was much more digestible and easy to discuss during a meeting, because no one wants to read paragraphs and paragraphs of a report during a meeting with many people. So presenting those options to those you're working with or the client as options, and also granting them like the agency to decide that, okay, maybe your idea does make sense to actually have visual elements to what we're trying to report is helpful in trying to garner more interest and buy-in to including more visualizations, and also getting you more work to do visualizations too. Hopefully that answers your question.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. So let's begin. So if I think I'm sharing my screen right now, so you should see your portfolio, right? Okay, great. For Chimdi. So first 5 questions are going to be for Chimdi, and then I will share Damola's portfolio and add some questions from there too. So yeah, a brief look through your portfolio, about 136 visits, amazing consistency. We share lots of Makeover Monday projects at the start, and now recently at the end. So what would you say is the reason for that? Like lots of Makeover Monday projects at the start and at the end. How would you also say that working with this community project has helped you improve your skills from where you're at to where you're at right now? From where you started, I mean, to where you're at right now. Hopefully I'm limited.
Great question. And I think I'm gonna repeat some of the stuff I already said, where with Makeover Monday, one of the reasons why I've stayed consistently with it is at the beginning, I just wanted to tap in and get free data sets. And the articles were inspiring to help me create things. And so the ease of access is the first reason. And then more recently, it ties in with what I shared with how I'm now one of the weekly hosts of Makeover Monday. And so I believe in leading by example. And so I think it would be ridiculous for me to be a part of this and at least not try to participate occasionally. But what happened in my case is that I just did one and I did the next one. And I just kind of had this goal of wanting to do more and continue to engage with it more, even though I'm a host. And so it was just more of a personal decision for me to just keep doing as many as I can. And so that's the one area that I'm able to come in weekly and force myself to say, let me get some practice in this week. So that's why you see a lot more consistency with that. It's just my way of saying work has gotten really busy. There isn't enough time for me to sort of think about stuff on my own or create my own projects. So at the very least, let me use what's out there and also help, show and share based on, what I'm involved with. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, the next question. In your recent dashboards, you have taken a business dashboard-oriented approach to data sets that could be described as more creative visualization related. I don't know if you get what I mean. So it's you've been trying to visualize data sets in sort of in a layout of like the business dashboard. Yeah. So what would you share as your reason for that?
I personally found that, and I think that's a good observation because I definitely intentionally started to do that. I found that a lot of people that I was working with, they want the creative aspect of things while being able to have opportunities to explore and filter and drill down. And so for me, I noticed that that's like a niche that I can really serve with. And so I do the whole aesthetics thing, the whole design thing, but you'll notice a lot of interactivity that also comes with that. And so the whole business layout is more just to keep it clean, because ultimately, you know, like you'll see some of my visits, dark mode and things like that, and that's more design based. But with the clean white backgrounds, you can really show things, make it clear, make it stand out. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm just using like the infographic like charting, but trying to combine it as much as possible with the business side of things. That way you can get like the beautiful looking stuff, but also in a sense business like, if that, you know, because ultimately we need to show those insights, those KPIs, but we can still do that with like nice looking charts and creative charts, as opposed to just line charts and bar charts and things like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so next question. So your dashboard, 5 design overhauls to improve business dashboards that are also like 1 views of the day, has amassed over 200,000 views and 1,600 favorites. You can see here, which is like amazing. Why do you think this is a community favorite in your opinion? And then if you go to the dashboard, it takes you through 5 steps to take your dashboard from meh to wow. So how does a beginner get familiar with these different steps and concepts so well that it becomes a part of them and their creative process without having to, you know, search for it or anything? It becomes part and parcel of you. Did you get that?
Yeah, definitely a good question. I think that's some good stuff to talk about. And I think that 2 things that help it resonate is that these are not difficult things to implement. You can easily make these like small tweaks and implement those changes to improve. That's A. And for each step, there's the how to do it, but there's also the why we do it. And so I think that just that mental connection that lets you know, okay, sure, we want to do this thing, but why? That makes it easier to grasp, and it makes it more easy to replicate. So, you know, when you're looking at a different dashboard, you're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to change this. We're going to change that. But having that mentality of why we're doing it, that both makes it easy to follow. And it also answers your other question where it makes it easy for it to become like second nature. So the more like makeovers, quote unquote, that you're doing, the more you're going to begin to recognize a pattern in do this all the time, do this all the time because of this. And eventually it becomes second nature to you. And I kept it at 5 steps because 5 is short, 5 is easy. You don't have to come back here all the time. You just have to think about the things and how they're laid out, and you can follow them easily.
Lovely, thank you. That was really helpful. So the next question is on the Press Freedom Index visualization, where it's a little bit less business dashboard and more into creative visualizations now. And yeah, your Press Freedom Index dashboard is an instant favorite, right? It's like choice of colors, white spacing, despite the fact that there's lots of text on the dashboard. And then there is also an important message that is being passed. From a design perspective, what were you most pleased about in this dashboard? And what subtle design techniques do you think help elevate the visualization? So just, yeah, take a look.
Yeah, so I think this one, I drew inspiration from something that I saw in the New York Times, where it was like a similar breakout of something they were analyzing. And so I wanted to do it in such a way where you have the overall story being told by the top main bee swarm. And so, you know, you have the numbers there that are indicating the different like statuses, very serious and difficult. And you can follow that through in the visualization. You can see the median, so you get to see where most things fall. You get to see the minimum and the maximum. So you kind of already have an idea of what's going on with the visual. However, if you want to dig deeper, then there's a lot of text there that actually explains what you're looking at. So that way it's more of like a confirmation. If you can recognize what's happening, fantastic. But if you just want me to tell you, I'm happy to tell you what that is. And so that gives you the overall. And then by the country zone, that just sort of breaks it down where, you know, the biggest design choice was rather than trying to add in a different chart type, why don't we keep it consistent, right? Because, you know, there's a lot of information being shown at that top B swarm, but I figured why not just keep it all the same, exactly the same, but break it out into regions. So that way, once you make it past the first part, you're able to just quickly assimilate what you're looking at as you're going down. And then even things like the sorting, where you're looking at it going down a certain slope, so you can easily tell, you know, that Middle East and North Africa is sort of the worst situation, and then gradually it gets better going down to Europe, and then you have the summary there where it just tells you number of countries and the situation there. So I think it was just keeping it in a way where, you know, there's a lot going on, and so once someone is able to start to grasp what's happening, they're only going to have to do it once in order to understand everything that's going on in that viz, rather than showing this here and then introducing a different chart type where they have to learn that, bringing in another chart type where they have to learn that. I figured keep it simple, keep it easy. That way, once people get it, they get it. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Definitely. Yes, definitely. So yeah, last question. So as a creative and as well as a data visualization developer, how do you bridge the gap between being overly expressive in your work and staying in line with data visualization rules as well, quote unquote? What would you say is the midpoint to try to find to bring out the best of both worlds?
Good question. Good question. I think it all starts with knowing what the rules are, what's helpful to do. And sometimes you're going to have to break them. But I think just understanding, you know, the different things like, you know, clarity, you know, color use, consistency, et cetera, et cetera. Once you understand all of that, you can basically take it and spread it on top of whatever idea you have. And so it all starts with knowing and educating yourself, because, you know, like when we all start, we're going to just try things randomly. Some things are going to work and some things are not going to work. But once we actually get to understand that there's actually a set of rules that exist that we can follow, then it makes it easier to now use that as a framework that you can apply to any viz. And that way you're creating different looks, different feels, but with the same level of consistency and quality that makes people connect better with those insights that you're trying to share. So yeah, knowing, like, and there's different resources out there. I'm going to share some of those in my talk, but I think knowing those rules and the frameworks that exist is really a good starting point.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was really helpful for walking us through your portfolio. So yeah, Damola, if you look at the screen right now, we are showing Damola's Tableau Public portfolio. It's really, really beautiful. So yeah, first question. There are 49 visualizations on your public account, and every one of them could pass as artworks in a gallery. What would you say has been very helpful for you to consistently produce at such high quality?
Yeah, thanks for the compliment about my business being in the gallery. I think the first thing is, like, one of the first books that I purchased to improve my skills was actually not a data viz book. It was Know Your Onions, which is a graphic design book. So my dad is a graphic designer. I'm not a graphic designer, but I always had interest in graphic design, and I've on various teams, even before I worked on as a data visualization specialist, I've worked with graphic designers and been just blown away by how they present information. And I use that first. And then since then, I've gotten a lot more data visualization books. But using elements of graphic design as well as data visualization best practices, in quotes, to improve and enhance and identify, like, what makes a quality viz, and implementing those into my visualizations has been really key. Really focusing on iterative design. So I'm constantly changing visualizations. I've said this before in other talks I've had, in that I actually have way more vizes I've never published than I have of the 49 I've published, because of various reasons. Like, there wasn't something that was working, or I just didn't like how something finally turned out, but I still went back and maybe pulled some elements from an old viz to adapt to a new one. So embracing also self-critique. You can definitely get critique from others, but using your own self-critiques to refine your work. and just challenging yourself to learn new skills. So I've challenged myself a lot to, you see, I have a lot of all kinds of different types of visualizations on here because I've wanted to learn different techniques and skills to enhance my the quality of my work.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, next question. Your portfolio has a feel of having both creative visualizations and business dashboards. So how would you advise a beginner on the best way to split up their visualizations on their portfolio? And what side should they probably lean more towards or not?
Yeah, I think for this type of question, like it really depends what you want your career path to be at the time. I don't know if there's really a right answer for this. But you should certainly focus on what your goals are and what your interests are. So if you're leaning towards a more of a BI role, then maybe focusing on business dashboards makes a lot more sense. You could certainly add elements like Chimdi was talking about with adding more design and aesthetic and more unique elements to the visualizations, not just bar charts and so on. But maybe not. Maybe you're focused on more of a data journalist career path or information design. So maybe doing more aesthetic visualizations which don't adhere to some of the, once again, quote unquote, best practices of data visualization is something you should focus on. So I really just think the answer depends on what you want your career path to go down. I know for myself, as I've said before, I focus on non-business dashboards with some elements of business dashboards here and there, and because I just use it as a skill development tool, but also because it interests me. But at the same time, it just really depends on what path you want to go down.
Amazing. Thank you. Amazing advice. So yeah, next question. So yeah, we're just opening up your, I don't know, you're gonna help me with the pronunciation of TUG.
Yeah, you got
Yeah.
it.
Okay, cool. It's definitely a gem of a work. If you just take a look through this visualization, it's really, really well done. Although it's a slightly unusual chart type and must have been very technical to build. So the question is, how do you get better technically at Tableau to build new and amazing stuff? And how do you then decide what could be a good choice of charts to tell a story?
Yeah, great question. And I think to answer this one, maybe I'll talk through like how I thought about this viz specifically, and then I'll talk big picture. So for this one, it was a bunch of different things that actually were put together to create or think of the inspiration for this. So I think I mentioned before that I try to catalog inspiration. I use, like Chimdi, I use Pinterest a lot, as well as some other things. And I had randomly come across, I think it was on YouTube, if not Pinterest, a video of a jellyfish, and I thought this is such a cool image, and it had very similar colors. I actually pulled some of the colors from that video. I took a screenshot of it and thought, okay, at some point I'm going to adapt this to a visualization. And then the Tuskegee Airmen Challenge came up, and I knew I wanted to do something aeronautical themed. I tried a few different ideas. I literally had a plane in the visualization, but it was too on the nose. I didn't think it just didn't look good. But I like the idea of something showing like the look of a propeller of the plane. And then I thought, okay, for this visualization, I think it's important to highlight every single Tuskegee Airman, not just summarizing it as a bar chart, for example. So really providing some level of importance to each member of the Tuskegee Airmen during World War II. So, and lastly, I also chose this visualization because it's radial. So radial, you tend to think of times, and this is showing time. So those multiple different things were adapted to create this visualization. Now, I think the second part of your question was, it was, how do I use it to tell the story? I think implementing real world examples, as I said before, like implementing the idea of that jellyfish and how that can inspire into a visualization was really important, and really communicating design concepts. As I said before, like using, as I said, using the lines to show each individual person was a way to provide importance to a person. I think during COVID, there was a lot of visualizations on deaths, and there was a lot of critiques of how best to show a life or an importance of an individual. So this was a great way, well, I thought it was a great way to really show the importance of each person and their importance and what they did during the war and so on. Basically, lastly, I think finding a way to enhance emotional response to a visualization, because I knew this was a challenge. This wasn't a business dashboard. I wanted people to have some form of reaction, hopefully positive, towards it. So figuring out a way to get people to have some form of feeling when they see the visualization, which was a lot of the rationale of like why I chose this chart type and the elements that influenced it. And lastly, I think it's important to pull skills from other people. There were two people. It was CJ Mays, who actually had a tool, a step-by-step on how to build this type of chart. And it was Sam Parsons, who has built an even greater version of this, I would say, visualization that inspired a lot of elements that I incorporated into this visualization itself. Hopefully that answers your question.
Can you hear me now, guys?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Breaking transmission. Okay, yeah, thank you. I think you discussed the visualization already. So yeah, to the next question. You can see my screen trying to share your page. Can you guys see now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, nice. So yeah, next question. Look at your first 5 dashboards and your last 5. So if we just let's take a journey through time and sorry, I think I might have. Okay. So let's take a journey through time. Let's look at the first 5. So if we look at the first 5, right? And then if we look at the last 5, there is a immense level of maturity in the storytelling, in the design, and the creativity. So how do you go from there to where you are now in your process as a developer? And then are there other tools that have helped you get to this stage? Maybe some other additional tools you use, or like some resources you used, or anything in particular that has helped you move from like what you had in your first 5 to your last 5. Does that make sense? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Makes sense. Another great question. I'll firstly reiterate what I've said and Chimdi said many times, is that practice, just practice. Just keep working on you, enhancing your skills that way. Taking courses, watching videos, reading blogs. These are all things I've done. I've been a guest blog writer a few times. It's helped me think about my process and thought, oh, that's how I did that. Maybe I could have done it a different way, or how that person's done it, how I could adapt that to how I visualize something. That's really a key thing. Seeking inspiration from others. But in addition to all this, okay, you see a visualization that's really interesting, opening up that workbook and trying to take it apart and identify, okay, this is how this was done. These are these calculations and so on, and seeing how people did it. And maybe it's a viz that is not accessible because you can't download it, reach out to the person that created it. I'm sure, well, not sure, but if there's a possibility that they would at least share a workbook version with you, or talk about what tools they use to develop the visualization. So I do that a lot. I get a lot of inspiration from a few people here, Chimdi for sure. So definitely opening up other people's workbooks and seeing how people did things to enhance your skills is really key. And as far as tools to improve and enhance your visualizations, one thing I use a lot is Figma. Figma is an open source tool, so you should all be able to access it. There is a paid version too, but you don't have to use that to do a lot of the things I do. I use Figma to do things like custom shapes, background colors and images, titles, and so on, sometimes for annotations that I want to look differently outside of Tableau. There are other tools you could use outside of Figma. Adobe has similar things too, although they are paid for. You do have to pay for a lot of them. But there are other things I use, such as Unsplash, which is an open source place to get images, all completely free. And other good websites are dribble.com, which is very similar to Pinterest, but specifically when it comes to design. Another one is Muesli, which is M-U-Z or Z.li. I'll drop these names in the chat, actually. And then the last one is Nightingale. I'm a subscriber of their magazine, but the website is also really helpful too. So using those resources as well as people's blogs, the Fledged Twins blog is brilliant, and there are many others. CJ Mays has a great one too. And there are many others I'm not naming here, but definitely checking those out. I use them all the time to identify new skills and enhance myself. So I'm gonna drop some of these in the chat. I think you're on mute if you're talking.
Oh yes, I was on mute. Sorry, it's an habit now. Yeah. Okay. So I was asking that I was going to ask about the favorites tab on the Tableau public page, or like your accounts, and also talking about how, and then asking you guys how you use this particular feature to also keep projects that you have in mind, or how best do you think you can use this particular favorites tab in terms of inspiration and working with things that you like and would like to replicate in the future. Chimdi can go first, and then Damola. Did you guys hear me? All right, cool. I think Chimdi, you're on mute. Are you? Oh, okay. We have to give you access to unmute. Okay, I think I get what you mean.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Cool.
Favorites tab. I think this is really, a reflection of the things that you're gonna find helpful. And so, I think we all use it the same way. We see something, either it's like we like the look of it, or it has a level of technical depth where we're thinking, I'd like to know what's under the hood there, so I'm gonna favorite it and come back to it. But ultimately, why I think it's helpful is because you may sometimes forget about these things, but then you come here and you're like, oh, there's this. And then something that you may have been working on, you now have a solution because you've seen something here. And so, depending on what your goal is, I know some people who are super technical, they're going to favorite more complex looking things. Some people who are more design oriented are going to favorite more design looking things, but it simply allows you to follow what's close to your heart, what inspires you. And it's a really great way of learning because most people make their stuff downloadable. All you have to do is favorite it and you can always come back to it anytime. Super helpful.
Thank you. Damola, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just echo a similar thing. But at the same time, it's also just a great way to support the community. Obviously, when you make a visualization, you want others to acknowledge or yeah, to acknowledge your work. And it's a great way to acknowledge other people's work too. And it's just a great platform to do that too. But on top of that, obviously, great way to catalog your Tableau public visualizations that you like and find inspiration from.
That is true. Like when people come to the community newly, like, you know, sometimes you just give them that support. There's a way of saying, keep going, we see you.
All right, cool. You guys can hear me, right? Okay. So last question now, before we take questions from everyone again, and then we're done, sort of, very close to the end. The question I also asked Chimdi, so I would like to know your opinion about it. About how do you bridge the gap between being overly expressive in your works and staying in line with data viz rules, right? And what would you say is the midpoint to try to find to bring out the best of both worlds? Did you get me?
Yeah, is that for me or Chimdi?
Yeah, for you. Yeah, Chimdi already answered it. Yeah.
Oh, he did. That's right. Okay. Yeah, for this one, I think so. Okay, there are rules, right? And these are certainly guides to follow, but they can be broken. I mentioned that I've been reading Nightingale, which is a magazine, data visualization magazine, and I think one of the issues, it was in guidelines issue. I actually can pull up a quote. Just from here. Yeah, here it is. Okay. There's a quote I want to read from it, which makes sense for this. So guidelines can be tools that can help you get started, put us in a productive direction, move us forward when we're stuck, shift our thinking when we need inspiration. But guidelines are not rules to be followed blindly, nor to be taken to their literal extremes. Our judgment, experience, purpose, and audience should always override their confines. When I came across this, I realized, oh yeah, this really resonated with me because I sometimes struggle between this balance of aesthetics and rules and best practices. So understanding there are rules, but these are not things that you have to follow blindly, and really adapting them based off of the needs of what you're trying to present is really important. There are certainly things when it comes to accessibility, so typography, color, visual hierarchy, and so on, that maybe you want to be more stringent in how you're implementing that into a visualization because you want it to be as accessible as possible. But at the same time, if it's as I mentioned before, like something you're presenting to convey an emotional reaction rather than an analytical use of a tool, use of a dashboard, then maybe following those guidelines doesn't need to be followed as strictly. Rules are a way to like reduce complexity of a visualization of something you're visualizing, but it really should be applied depending on the situation. I'm not saying don't follow rules by any means. I definitely try to follow the guides as much as possible, but understanding that they can be bent based off of the needs of the audience, of the reader, of the users, dependent on what you're trying to visualize. Hopefully that answers your point. So I guess it's like it really depends where the midpoint is, depending on like what the actual final result of the deliverable you're creating really is.
Thank you. Yeah. So cool.
I think the next question that we have would be from people, and we have a question from hi. Okay, so I have a question here, and then we'll take the questions from the virtual environment as well. So yeah, first question is coming.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. My name is Neto. been great to listen to you guys share experience. Some of the questions I wrote down earlier have already been answered, so I'll just ask the last one that hasn't been answered. So how do you get past creative blocks for your own personal projects? Like apart from the community projects, Big Over Mondays, Cosby Sunday, like how do you get past the blocks for your own projects? Like how do you decide on the next one? If you're having issues deciding on what next one's going to be, or you're writing the middle of a dashboard and it's just not coming together, like how do you get past all of those things and like push through essentially? She's not intentionally. She's not. She's got a phone.
Can you?
Sorry, did you have my question?
Yeah, they got his question. They got a question.
Just
Sorry,
to
do you
confirm,
get the question? Okay, cool. Yeah.
the question was, how do you get past creative blockages, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can go first unless you want to speak, Chimdi. Okay. I think for me, there's a few things that can be done. There's no, magic answer to this, I don't think. But things I typically do, like stopping what you're doing. Maybe there's something else that's blocking you from getting past that hurdle. So maybe going to work on another project, maybe doing something completely different, maybe stepping away from your computer entirely and doing something else to get your mind off of what could be blocking it. Is something I've had to do a few times. I mentioned before about sketching, so mind mapping or mind mapping. So even before the idea of sketching out what it could look like, really like brainstorming and mind mapping. Okay, here are all the various ideas, and maybe you can identify what's not working when you're looking at these various connections. Iterating on what you're developing, seeking new inspiration, and yeah, I think those are the key things. I mean, definitely getting feedback from others, right? If you're stuck, whether it's someone who's in the data viz field or maybe not, maybe it's someone else completely different. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a friend who has no connection to it. Maybe they could provide some important ideas or helpful ideas to get you over that hurdle when it comes to creative blockages. I mean, I tend to do that a lot when I think of an idea and it's really not quite clicking. There's just something I'm missing from it, and sometimes someone outside of the field could provide some important insights for you to get over that blockage. Hopefully that helps. Over to you, Chimdi.
Yeah, I think I definitely second the first part of that. I'll be honest, I'm someone who I can really get stuck in my head. So when I'm pushing harder, I find I get more frustrated. So when I blocked, I literally just shut it down and I leave. Sometimes that means I never come back to it, I'll confess. But when you leave and you just forget about it, more than likely an idea is just going to pop up very randomly, right? And so, if it's something that I've already committed to finishing, I'll go on Pinterest and I'll just flick through, but I won't go back to it. I'll just try to figure out a way to get some juices flowing. And from that point on, once you get something on your mind, I'll just write it down, right? Because that's what tends to happen for me. Things pop in randomly. I write it down, and then I think about how I'm actually going to implement it, and then I go back and do it. But that means that sometimes there's a gap between your process. So you can go maybe a few hours, and then you may leave it for a week and come back in, and all of a sudden you're good to go. So honestly, leaving it, don't apply too much pressure. When you apply too much pressure, it becomes worse. So I'd say just like hands off, go find something else to do, touch grass outside, whatever it is.
Thank you. Touch grass. Yeah. I don't know if I have any questions in the chat. I don't know if you guys can also look at the chat to see if you have questions for you there. So that we can take them because we're just close to the end.
While people are doing that, can I ask a question of Damola? I was just going through his profile and I just realized something. And so I noticed that, first of all, I'll make a comment to say that I'm a person who I don't believe that I can have success in utilizing images in my data viz. However, every time I see you do it, it looks like the image was supposed to be there. Like it just blends in somehow, whether it's just with the background, the shadow, the way it's floating. And I haven't seen a lot of people successfully do that in the entire community in the way you do it. So how exactly do you manage to always nail it 10 out of 10 every single time? That's literally something that I think would be helpful for all of us here.
Appreciate that compliment. Yeah, I think for me, using the image is important to help tell the story. There's a few times I've used an image to immediately show, okay, it's directly related in some capacity to what I'm visualizing. And I will say that I use Figma a lot to do this, as well as Unsplash to identify the actual images I'm going to use, unless I find them online somewhere else. And I think a lot of the inspiration I've gotten from graphic designers is where I get these ideas from. A lot of I have specific Pinterest boards on just graphic design, and how they've used an image for an advertisement, right? With a background, and used it for a title. So pulling colors specifically to enhance or show what I'm visualizing. For example, my food apartheid in Washington, D.C. viz, I've literally used the colors of the visualization behind the skyline of DC, to almost give like a visual cue of, oh, these are the colors I'm using in the actual visualization. It doesn't give you like actual numbers or proportional size and so on, or other analytical points, but it does give you a tiny visual cue of what you're about to be looking at when it comes to the visualization. And I've done this in a few times in visualizations because I just think I don't think it can necessarily hurt. I do try to go with like the infographic look to visualizations. So if I can use an image to help tell the story, I think it can only help to. Hopefully that answers your question, Chimdi.
Yeah, definitely helpful. I think it's obviously we're probably going to need a lot of practice to get as good as you, but thanks for sharing that for sure. It makes such a huge difference. Like even just looking at this, I think this is literally one of my favorite visualizations on Tableau Public. Just the aesthetics, the analysis, like it hits really hard. You know, it's beautiful.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think we showed the viz earlier, and the viz generated like conversations, and we were like, look at that. Well, yeah, good. I don't know if we have any more questions in the chats, and if we have any questions from here, anybody. But yeah, I think Chimdi, you might have a question. I could read it out if you want, but I don't know if you can say it as well. Chimdi and Damola, I think there's a question for you guys there. Can you see the question, or you want me to read it out?
I guess maybe you can read it so everyone just kind of.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. So, yeah, the question is, so my question is basically on work environment. So, what is the timeline for submitting a visa report? One. Okay, I guess that's the first question. I don't know if you got it. And then the second question is, how do you guys validate your reports and data analysis results? Like for beginners, if they need to be sure of the analysis. So say you're building something or you are trying to work on something, how do you get to that point you feel like, yeah, sure, what I'm doing is right? Or like there's a problem with this? So Damola, I can go first.
Yeah, so the first part of the question was how long does it take? Is that right?
So the first part of the question is yeah, like the timeline for submitting a visa report. I think that's a little bit blurry, but you can start from the second question and maybe the person can explain the first question better. So the second question is, how do you guys validate your reports or your visualizations and like actually know what you're showing is, is like the visualization is not lying, let me say it that way. So you feel like, yeah, sure, this is true, right? Like, yeah, I think chats can lie things, but yeah, that kind of thing. if you get me.
Yeah, so when it comes to validating the data, I mean, you want to have a pretty robust data cleaning process in place first. So before the data is actually in Tableau and you're playing around with the various chart types that you're planning on implementing to the visualization, making sure that fields that should only show string values only show string values. Are they written how they should be written? Same thing for numerical values and so on, spelling, and many other things that could be happening in the data, depending on the type of data source you're pulling into Tableau. So having a robust data cleaning process first, and then when it's actually in Tableau and you're creating these visualizations, doing as much as once again a robust spot check of especially if you have calculations, does the visualization directly show what the data should be showing, reflecting what it should be showing? Are there outliers? Should there be outliers? And if there should, maybe this is something you should be using to provide additional analysis on or enhancements for users when they're actually going into the dashboard. So that's a key thing. But beyond that, having a good UX, UI, QC process. So this is both on the UX, UI analysis and check of the visualizations, but also a QC of the data once again from someone else is really key. So it's really good to get another pair of eyes on your visualization. So if you have colleagues to look at your work, definitely want to do that. If it's a personal project, maybe getting someone else to do a plug and play and to check that it actually functions how it should be functioning. I'm probably speaking in your head, but so not just the actual values, but also does the functionality work? Do these filters work correctly? Does this interaction with clicking on, let's say, a map and drilling down, does that actually work as it should? So that's really key. So trying to develop at every stage a level of robustness when it comes to those QC checks is really important for quality controlling your work. There was this first part of the question, but I'll let Chimdi answer that question first.
Yeah, so in terms of validation in QA, I think the only thing that I will add is that in Tableau, before building out the visualizations, I personally would literally just build out tables, right? So for example, if I'm analyzing, let's say hypothetically, percent change year over year across different regions, I just build it out in table form. I look at those numbers and I leave that sheet there while I develop my visuals. Once the numbers match, then I can delete the original sheet. That's for like my personal business. At work and with clients, we always have this rule where whoever does the visualization is not going to do the validation. We don't want any kind of bias involved with that. So you build it, you can do your checks in Tableau, but someone else is always going to look at those numbers and validate that it's correct to match, whatever table source there is, and that your visual is literally like one-to-one and everything. So that way, by the time it goes out, you're not having to deal with like, oh, but these numbers don't match this thing that we know of, or these numbers don't match the reports. And it's just a clean process. It may take longer, but it's more productive in the long term. And it's more like fail-proof, if that makes sense.
Amazing. Yes, very much true. I don't know if we have any more questions, but okay, yes, sorry. We have a question here in person, so yeah. Sure.
Hi. Hello everyone. Yeah, so my question is, okay, my name is Toby Adedamola. So my question is, I want to ask, I see lots of visuals that would I call it complex now. So in the real business world, if I can say it, clients don't want to see something that, you understand? So how do I say it now? Where do you get these clients that actually want that kind of complexity in what you guys have on your profile? You understand? Are they actually out there? And where can you get them? Yeah. Thank you.
Did you get a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool stuff. Yeah, Damola, I can go first.
Yeah, I think this is something where it really depends on what are the user needs. I mean, if you're talking about a client, who are the people that are actually going to be using this dashboard, and does a specific chart type answer the questions that they want to answer. I mean, if a bar chart is going to answer the questions they're going to answer, then maybe that's all you need, and you don't need to get complex. But maybe you're working with potential users who are pretty advanced or users who need to be attracted to a visualization, and it has to be something beyond just a standard, some of the typical standard types of charts. So it really depends on really answering like what are the specific needs of the user, and then using a specific chart type to answer those questions. I can say from experience, I think most of the time I'm using the pretty standard charts that are within Tableau. I'm not using a lot of advanced charts. We do use a lot of advanced calculations to create visualizations, but not necessarily charts, because our the users are not looking for those specific chart types. But there are occasions where, especially if it's like a standalone visualization, then we have used some more advanced chart types. It's seldom done in my professional work, but definitely in my personal projects, I have no limitation because I don't necessarily have a client that I'm presenting to.
Good. Chimdi Nwosu next.
Yeah, so in my experience, same thing. At work, you're generally going to need to stay within the realm of simplicity, because majority of your users are not going to have the patience or desire to work harder for their insights, right? And so in terms of, where these clients come through that I'm able to serve, I find they come actually from seeing my profile on Tableau Public, and they point to a specific list to say, we want you to do this kind of thing for us with our data. So a lot of that comes with basically, they will find you, I guess is the way to see it. But till today, I don't think I've actually found someone who actually wanted something that was more complex. They will always tell you they want something simple, but when you meet that specialist client, they're going to tell you, this is what I'm looking for. So I say, realistically, don't expect to do a lot of complex stuff with data viz. You can do it to show that you have the capacity, but I wouldn't say you should expect to be doing a lot of that on the job. More than likely, you're going to have to do it on a freelance based thing. That's what I found is, usually it's just like a one-time gig here and there, but having a job where you're actually utilizing complex visits, I doubt we're going to be seeing a lot of those anytime soon. It's just not conducive to the business environment where they need to make the decisions quickly. And that's one of the reasons why they're not going to ask you for that. And data literacy at this point in time and this stage of the industry is still really low. And so until people get really, up to that level, it's highly unlikely that they're going to want to complicate things. So, if you have a passion for that or you're curious about that, I say definitely explore, but do that out of your own passion. You know what I mean? And if they need your stuff, they'll come find you and you can give them what you got.
I know the guy. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think someone has a question, but the person could pop it in the chat. And then okay, great. Okay, the question is in the chat. I don't know if you guys can see it, and then you guys just want to take it like that. But let me read it out for the sake of people that are here physically. So how do you use colors correctly and efficiently? I think this might be our last question. And how do you determine the right colors to use? Using colors, I think it's such a huge conversation. And how do you use colors? You get to use several colors in your visualizations. How do you not abuse it? And how do you keep it like cool and still make sense? Anyone could say, you guys use colors well.
Chimdi, I feel like you're the real color guy, so maybe you go first.
I think there's two things to think about with respect to colors, because that is a good question. Like I generally believe that the choice of color palette can actually make or break a data visualization, right? As little as funny as that sounds. And so two things to consider would be, what kind of emotion are you trying to evoke with the colors? And one thing to help with that, you can literally Google the meaning of colors, and you'll find that different colors, they're going to elicit different emotions in the human brain. That's step one. step two, how can I actually find great palettes to use? There's lots of tools out there. You've got the Data Fam Colors by Kevin Flerlarge and Rodrigo Caloni. You have Pinterest. Literally, you can download boards with 10, 15, 20, 30 different palettes. You can do Adobe Color, because there are certain rules involved in choosing colors that work together. But for the most part, most of us are not going to want to take the time out to curate those ourselves. And so just going online and, just looking at those palettes, you can literally just utilize the hex codes to bring them into your work, right? Because ultimately, it is going to make a huge difference in what your data viz looks like and how people feel when they look at it. Does that help answer that question? And I guess Damola, you can also add to that too, because I feel like you also are a master of color utilization.
Appreciate it. Yeah, once again, echoing what Chimdi said, using color to really being specific and purposeful about the colors you're using to help tell the story is really important. You do not need a ton of color to, I mean, you can, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you do not always need a ton of color to tell the story, because sometimes having a limited amount of color and using specific colors at certain times to highlight key insights can really enhance a visualization you're working on. But also understanding context. I can think there was a time when I was working on a visualization and I thought some certain colors would make sense for a visualization, but then I found out actually no, because there were some factors related to politics that certain colors couldn't be used, even though it made sense for a visualization. So understanding context, whether it's geographic, culture, something else, is really important also. And lastly, as Chimdi was saying, using tools, and also using tools to understand accessibility. So you may not have a functional access need that prevents you from seeing the difference between two colors, but I think it was 8% of people in the world have some level of color blindness, and there's many types. There's more than one. I'm not sure how many there are, but there's a lot. So using tools like the Adobe color wheel that Chimdi mentioned, and there are other tools too to identify which colors are actually accessible based off of the colors they're behind. And the great thing about the Adobe tool is that, and it shows you how accessible is that color for text, how is it for large and small text, and how accessible is it for visualization. So it's not just about typography on a page, it's also about whether it works for a chart that you're working on. And how does that color work with other colors you're using? Does that contrast work? And it provides suggestions for other colors you could use. So yeah, using all these tools that are available online, and I'll drop a couple in the chat. There's cassie.vercel.app, which is another one. I'll drop the link to that shortly, which is a really important one that can help you advance your color usage and help you tell the story.
Thank you. All right, I think that might just be it for today. Thank you so much for hopefully you can hear the applause. Also in the chat. All right, thank you so much, guys. Thank you from Lagos TUG. Thank you for being able to present. And I think you've answered loads of questions that a lot of us have always had. And definitely from here, we want to see like more beautiful dashboards and visualizations in terms of colors and usage and everything we've talked about. So thank you very much, Chimdi and Damola. We're so happy to have you guys, and thank you once again.